What's up, guys? This is Doctor, and welcome to another episode of the FPL Fantasy. FPL is finally back after a month and a half off, I believe. It was a nice holidays from recording videos and stressing about FPL, but there was the World Cup, and what a World Cup. And of course, I'm joined by my ASPN co-host, Joe. Joe, how are you?
Hey Doc, how you doing? I'm
Hey.
doing all right. Sorry for getting getting ready for the day here. Just kind of feeling a little bit like a tech bro. You know, ready to game. But at the end of the day, I'm gonna spend 40 some billion dollars on a company, and it's not gonna work out, and everybody involved in it's gonna kick me out of this thing. So figure I dress the part, right? Dress for the job you want. I'm excited
Yeah.
to be back for game week 17 to corrupt the minds of FPL managers everywhere, create more risk in the community, more fun, and most of all, get mad when my rank drops like almost a million when one bad week happens. So I'm excited. Let's do this. Game face.
So it's bu- so it's business as usual, and that cap reminds me of Lev Yashin. Well, I didn't watch Lev Yashin play, but you know what I mean. So welcome to another episode, everybody. In this episode, we're going to talk about three main topics as usual, and then we're going to show you our latest draft with the unlimited transfers that we have. The first topic, we're going to talk about the 8 million midfielders range. There is a lot of debate regarding that in the Twitter community and the FPL community in general. And the second topic is the Almiron price range. So is it Rashford, Martinelli, or Almiron? And I believe I looked at Joe's draft quickly. Usually, I don't look at his draft before the episode, so everything is kind of natural. And he has a look at my draft, usually because he's the one who's handling the graphics. But I think we're going to disagree on the Almiron price point options, let's say. And it's going to be an interesting episode. Let's get into this, Joe.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk some business.
Yeah, let's do it. So, first point of business is the 8.0, 8.3, 7.8 price range. Who do you have, Joe?
Um. Oh, never mind. I'm sorry. That was the lawyers calling in. I wanted to make sure everything was good before we got a lawsuit against us. Yeah, we can talk about this. This is great. This is great. So, I think what you really want to look at here is players like Foden, Saka. I think Madison's going to come back with a little bit of fire in his belly. I mean, he ended the first half of the season with a bunch of fire. He was ready to go. Leicester in general, everybody was beating up on him, and out of nowhere, they're just like, "Yeah, we're not here just to be kicked around." I think probably any of those three are probably your big guys that you're looking at. I have favorites, but if I told you my favorites, I'd be spoiling my draft. So you might have to stick around for that. But I don't think Foden is going to get rested right off the get go. I might be wrong, but Pep's words of just basically being like, hey, the guys that went to the World Cup, they're coming back in shape like they never left. And the guys that never left, they're coming back like they went on a 8-month bender in Amsterdam. So that kind of gives a little bit of weight behind Foden. Like I said, Madison's going to be a little bit fired up. He got put into the World Cup team, didn't play, comes home, little angry, got a chip on his shoulder, something to prove. Saka, I mean, it seems like for the most part, he's on most penalties. He did pretty well in the World Cup. I think he's got a little bit of confidence coming in now. So, can't go wrong no matter who you pick there. Doc, how about you?
The way I look at it, the options are Mason Mount, Kulusevski, Foden, Saka, Madison, and Anthony. And that's the way kind of the options I was looking at. And I think I'm going to sit on the fence for the first minute and then I'll give you kind of my final decision. I think it's team dependent, what kind of this point 0.3, point 0.4 does to your team. If it upgrades, for example, a Leicester goalkeeper to Kepa, because a lot of people are going for Kepa, and we're going to discuss this slightly. I think you can weigh those options. So it's really team dependent. But in isolation, for example, you mentioned Madison. Madison has Newcastle, Liverpool as the first two games. So I'm treating Newcastle like a top six team. That's it. Yes, it's debatable whether they're going to continue their form after the World Cup, after the break, but with the current information we have, which are lacking basically, I'm going to treat Newcastle as a top 6 team. So Newcastle, Liverpool are not really favorable fixtures for Madison. So I'm taking that out as an option. Mason Mount, I have to admit, I looked at him and they have Bournemouth, Nottingham, Man City, and double. Well, at 19 with Man City. So there are a lot of doubles coming up for a lot of teams. And I recommend everybody watching if I'm sure everybody watching knows Ben Krillin, but if you don't know Ben Krillin, go follow him on Twitter because he predicts the double game week. So most doubles, if it's not Man City playing, it's someone playing against Man City. So I'm trying to not to take doubles too much into consideration with my options. So they are favorable fixtures, but they are Chelsea. We don't know how Potter is settling in now after the break. I think Saka will be one of the people top of my list because he's on penalties, as you mentioned, and he sways, and the penalties sway that to his side. My favorite option, however, would be Foden. Foden gives you access to a Man City midfielder, highly likely to play as many matches as possible. Yes, Pep will rotate because Man City have ridiculous schedule with a lot of double Champions League concentration and all those kind of things. But if you want access to Man City midfielders, I think he's the best midfielder to have. So I would say Foden and Saka is like very, very, very close. I've seen a lot of Kulusevski's. I'm not a big fan of Tottenham fixtures, especially people are looking at the double and Arsenal Man City, with Man City again in game week 22. So I'm not a big fan of the I'm not a big fan of Spurs fixtures. They are nice fixtures, and also Kulusevski, kind of the ceiling you feel is not that high. He's more of an assister rather than a scorer. Scorer, watch him score a hat trick next game week. So I would say Foden, Saka are my favorite two. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with probably most of what you said there. Kulu, he's just a tough one because it's like what Spurs team is going to come out. Now, I don't care if they're playing, an all-star team or whatever. The Spurs will probably do really well. Where I get worried is if they're playing promoted sides. That's when they don't win games by like 3 goals or so. I agree. I think there is a little bit of buyer beware and hesitation put on Kulusevski for sure. But
Yeah, and
yeah,
I absolutely agree with what you mentioned because the team is set up to kind of counter. So if the other team sits back, drop back, park the bus type of defense, it's really tough to break them down. You have the speed of the fullbacks. The way that Conte sets up his team is just Son run at the defense, Kane drops and just plays to the wingers kind of strategy. So yeah, I absolutely agree. The team is more set up for a team that's coming right at them and trying to attack.
yep, for sure.
So we didn't mention Anthony. What do you think about Anthony? He's a punt, and I really like that punt. What do you think about that, Joe?
I think he's viable. He ended the first half of the season really good form. If you're looking to spend money in the forward for Martial or in the midfield, I'd probably go Anthony for right now. Martial, I mean, he's a stud. If he's the guy on the field, he'll probably get you points nonstop. But yeah, he doesn't pull my interest as much as other Man United assets.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I would like to say that I prefer Rashford to a certain extent or Martial to a certain extent at this point. Anthony, you barely see him in the penalty area. You see him taking long shots, more of an assister, or if he scores a goal, he's not going to score a brace. So I prefer Rashford. He's on some free kicks, the random penalty if Bruno now somehow doesn't play or gets injured. So I prefer Rashford, yes, and I prefer Martial at this point. Martial is a great punt as well, but yeah, and Anthony at his price point can be tempting, but for point 0.8 more to get to Foden, for a few more to get to Saka, I think I prefer those two options. I agree. We move on to our next topic, which is the Rashford price point slash. Yes, Rashford is point 0.9 more expensive than Almiron at the moment, but if you had Almiron early, you had money invested in and everything. If you had to choose between Martinelli, Almiron, and Rashford, Joe, who would you go for?
I'm bringing in my boy Almiron. Jack Grealish loves him. I love him. Case closed. Easy. Super simple.
Do you think he will keep up his form, the form that he had in the first half of the season, or is just it was a form and it's going to dissipate?
I think that's dependent on what Newcastle end up doing. I think Eddie Howe is a very critical piece to Almiron's form. He loves his little midfielders that kind of do whatever the heck they want as long as they just score goals. And I think that's given Almiron kind of a boost of confidence to be able to come into this player that he was in the first half of the season. So as long as Howe doesn't get sacked, which would kind of be wild, another Thomas Tuchel type of situation, I guess. I put my money on Almiron.
Fair enough. Well, I'm not so sure about those options. Martinelli can play the number nine. Arteta mentioned that actually in his press conference last night. They have the probable double coming up as well in game week 21, as Ben Crellin mentioned. There is a good chance he might take the odd penalty if Saka doesn't want to take it or Saka is not on the field. So I think Martinelli, especially if you have money tied in, it's really nice to have Martinelli in your team. Rashford showed form last night. I was hoping he doesn't show form because he was nailed on in my draft since day one. I think Rashford will be on top just because of the short-term fixtures. He has Nottingham Forest at home and Bournemouth at home in the next three. I really like those fixtures. However, Leicester and Leeds for Almiron in the next two as well. So it's a very tough decision to make. I think it depends on the balance that you have. You just go for one and pray that the other two blank, to be honest. You will see from my draft whom I'm gonna go for and how I rank them. You're gonna see it clearly in my draft on the next segment.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a whole list of players right in the midfield there where I wish I could have like 10 midfielders. If I only get under 7 million midfielders, can I have unlimited? Like, is that okay? Because, I mean, Rodrigo, dude was crushing it. Odegaard, another one that was doing very well, point 0.4 less than Martinelli. Ties him for points right now. Is going to be a critical piece. Is always a critical piece. You have your Brighton guys. Yeah, just too many options at that price point, and prices don't matter. So as Almiron showed, a 5.8 can definitely beat a 13 million.
And you did mention Brighton. I should mention that Brighton do not have confirmed double game week yet, but they are highly likely to get a double game week according to Ben Crellin. I think it's game week 21 and even possibly a triple game week. So I have that in my mind ready to jump in at least a couple of assets from Brighton in case they get a double game week. And it's going to be a favorable double game week. Man City will not be one of them. So, yeah, I would keep that in mind moving on to our drafts. And shall we move on to our drafts, Joe?
Yep, sounds good.
All right. And we get to the draft segment. And of course, we start with Joe's. Joe, run us through your team.
Yeah, so, I mean, I have our good old cheap goalkeepers in the back. The Leicester boys, save a little bit of money there. I was looking at bringing in Kepa. I was looking at keeping Henderson. I was looking at a million options there. But ultimately, I'm just like, yeah, I can do more with that money. And Leicester were starting to figure out their defense towards the end of the first half of the season. So, went with those two. Then in the back line, you see we have Saliba, the Wolves man. I don't know how you say his name.
Wait.
What?
Well, I hope it's Bueno.
That's what I was thinking. But, you know, as your resident American, I don't, I got to watch what I say. The lawyers were telling me don't say it, let Doc say it. So, my man, Doc has said it. Then Akanji, I know the dark horse of my defensive line. Why isn't Cancelo in there? People are screaming at probably through their TVs or monitors. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for that. I just think that he performed really well at the end. Cancelo, we're still waiting for FPL Cancelo to show up where he's going to just crush it on the attacking end. I think it's better just to save the 2 million, bring in this man. I think he's got fairly decent starting spot. Who knows? Maybe he gets tossed out for Walker or somebody. I don't know. We'll figure it out. We got time, but I think right now he's going to be my City defender. Trippier, because why not? And then Cucurella. Everybody is going for James, and everybody knows how I feel about James. And I was going to bring in James, but then I remembered he hates FPL points. He refuses to score. He'll get 20, and then he'll spend the next 10 game weeks getting ones and zeros. And everybody laughs at me, but he does it every single time. There's too much pressure, and he's not going to be able to perform. So if you want James to perform, do yourself a favor, leave him out of your team, he'll perform, and don't bring him back. Don't do it. It's not going to happen. So, Cucurella, even though you know my feelings with Potter and Cucurella, whatever, he's here, he's a good asset. He's in the Chelsea defense that have some some good and interesting fixtures coming up. So he's my man. He's my man. Then looking at the midfield here, Saka, Foden. You know, we talked about it. I think Saka and Foden are the two must-haves there. Fernandez, which people are like, are you dumb? This isn't his first season in the league. Rashford is clearly a better option. If Ronaldo's in the team, Rashford's a better option. If Ronaldo's not, Fernandez is always the better option. Trust me on this. Trust me on this. Ten Hag did an honor for United, but most of all, our man Bruno. Just wait and see. Just wait and see. And then Andreas, finally bringing him in after not having him for the whole season. Yeah, sure. Come on in, bud. Get on the bench and get 15 points like everybody else's team. And Almiron. It's Almiron. Yeah, obviously. It's like Holland. You just put him in your team and you look the other way. Don't worry about anything else. Then at my top line, something that I've only seen in like one or two FPL teams, I have Darwin, I have Holland, and I have Kane sitting up top. So you might think, oh my gosh, Joe, are you going to run a front three? Yes. Why ask those questions? Why waste time commenting on that? Comment on something else. Be like, really? Cucurella? Thank you. I'm so glad I was able to present for you guys today. Doc, what do you think? Anything you think is wrong? This team is perfect.
It's funny that you just mentioned that. We've been doing this, whatever, YouTube for like a full season now. We started last season midway. And it's the first time that I really, really, really like your team. That means I'm wrong. So it's funny you say that. It's actually a great team. A lot of punts. It's a Joe's team. I like Fernandez in there. By the way, under Ten Hag, Bruno's playing very nice positions. He's falling in a very nice positions, and also without Ronaldo now, he can be this 10.5 position. I watch him closely, and I think there is merit to having him. I would warn though on Harry Kane, he's on 4 yellow cards, I believe. So the next yellow card would mean 1 match suspension. I believe you wouldn't want that player on your bench, especially because you don't want to sell him because he has the fixtures. So I would consider that as an option. But he's an attacker, so you can always say, okay, I'm gonna sell him once he gets that yellow card.
Yeah, let me interject there for a second, Zach, because I understand your concern about Harry Kane. The 11.5. I mean, I dogged on you last year for having Salah on the bench for, 3 or 4 game weeks during AFCON. Quick question. Do you see the rest of my team? Okay. I rest my case.
Well, I've noticed the front line in everybody's team is Darwin, Haaland, and then someone. So you cannot go wrong because usually that other someone is Mitrovic. So instead of Kane, most people are having Mitrovic. And guess what? Mitrovic is also on 4 yellows. But because Mitrovic's price is half of Kane's price, people are fine with it. But you can go anywhere from Kane. You cannot go anywhere from Mitrovic. So I see the point. That's why I'm saying I don't hate your team. Akanji, I understand why he's there. I would be very careful with the Man City schedule. But you can also go to a Brighton defender once you see there is no potential for Akanji, especially when they get their double gaming. So I really like Akanji there. However, I do think Pep will rotate like crazy in the next 5-6 game weeks. So I understand it as well. Even if you had Cancelo is highly likely to be rotated. Maybe not as much as Akanji because of just the competition in the positions. But Pep is Pep. I like your team. That doesn't happen often. I really, really like your team. I see the point of you wanting to go to Kepa. I see a lot of Kepas. I wanted to mention this point about Kepa. Usually, I don't like bringing a goalkeeper that might face a competition from someone else, and Kepa might face a competition from Mendy at some point, and then you are kind of forced to do a transfer or just play Ward and then have a 4.5 on the bench. So that's fine, but I'd rather have Ward and Everson if I don't have the cash. Yeah.
Yeah. So just so you know, I do actually have 0.9 in the bank here, almost a whole million with this team that I've put together. So I do have the money to go up if I wanted to. You know how I pick my goalkeepers. I don't care so much about the clean sheets because unless you're paying, 5.5, 6 million for the top goalkeepers in the league, you're probably collecting a bunch of save points. And especially if the defense goes bad. And what has happened with Leicester? They've either collected 1 million save points or they've gotten clean sheets. So either way, I feel like I'm winning in this situation. So that's why I think I'm just sticking with Ward right now. I'm not too worried about it. But yeah, I like this team a lot. But my issue is, like I said, I want 10 midfielders across the center. Just give me those spots. And don't take away from my other spots. Maybe give me, 7 or 8 defenders also. And if you want, you can have 2 forward spots, okay? FPL, you can have 2 forward spots. Leave me with Holland, and let's make this work. Let's make this a game, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can move on to my team now. The team is in front of you. And as I mentioned, my philosophy when it comes to playing FPL, as usual, what I did is made a spine, made a team, made the players, put the players that I really like, that I really want, kind of nailed on, and then just built with the money around. I started with James, Cancelo, and Trippier as my 3 defenders that I would like. I added Martinelli, Rashford, Salah as the midfielders that I really like. And then I was debating the 8 million. I added Haaland, Mitrovic, Darwin as my attackers. So the team is fairly set. I think it's highly unlikely it's going to change. The elephant in the room, the big miss here is Almiron, of course. And I like Ben White. Ben White is ridiculous value. I got him early, so I got him cheaper than what he's actually at right now. So it's a really nice kind of balanced team. I'm ready to go to a Brighton player. I'm ready to go to Saka for Foden. If Foden fails, I'm ready to go to Almiron if Foden fails. So it's a flexible team, and we discussed a lot during the first 2 segments regarding the 8.0s, and you can see clearly who I prefer from the Almiron, Rashford, and Martinelli. I prefer the Martinelli, Rashford at the moment. This can change by the deadline if I can just use the money somewhere else or play with it. I have point 0.1 left in the bank, so there is not much leeway I can play with at the moment. But yeah, this is my team. Rip it apart, Joe.
No, I mean, being honest, this was basically the team that I was originally going for when I sat down and I'm like, okay, who do I want? Who performed well in the World Cup? Who had time off that, probably put in some work, had some rest, is ready to go? And kind of came up with what you have here. It's also very similar to what I had before the break, too, if I remember right. Because I had Rashford in, I had Martinelli in. I mean, not Salah or Foden or Andreas, but I had a lot of these what I feel like are core value players that a lot of people are using to afford like a threemium or even the legendary unicorn of FPL, the formium. And I feel like there's more areas to spread value, and I'm kind of riding on this whole mindset of and you're doing it in this situation probably more than me in certain positions of your 6.0 can definitely outscore your 13 million. like like that can happen. We've seen that. That's Almiron this year. That's Rashford kind of came out of nowhere. Martinelli is doing great. Don't look at the number and be like, oh, I can only have one 6 million player, which is what I like you have here. You have the Rashford, you have the Martinelli. Andreas is kind of a dark horse because nobody thought super much of him. I feel like a little bit at the beginning of the season. He was a starter, he was an enabler. People were happy with that, threw him in his team, and now he's getting points for everyone. Another perfectly valid person that you can just throw right into your lineup, your starting lineup, and feel confident, hey, I might get some points out of it. So that's one of the things that I like about your draft. Things that I hate about your draft. James.
Not surprised.
James. Foden, but, I hate myself for having Foden, so that's kind of an all-around thing. Everybody shares a little bit of the hate. I think having 2 Liverpool, that's dangerous too, but it's Salah. Everybody loves Salah. Yeah, he got a goal in the friendlies. Okay, but Salah loves scoring against non-English teams. We see it in the Champions League. He's done it all season. Scores, gets points in the Champions League, forgets how to score when he comes to the Premier League. Darwin, I included him. He's a great include.
Joe, I actually considered moving Salah to KDB and then Foden to one of the 8.0s we kept discussing. Even I considered moving Foden to Almiron, and then I have all the 6 point something or 5.8 players in my team. But then I don't know what to do with the rest of the money. Like I would have about 2.5, 2.8 left in the bank, and then it's a bit too much to have in the bank at this stage. Yes, it will make me more flexible, blah, blah, blah. But I think I have all the players that I really need in my team. So I did think about those options, and things might change up to the deadline with the games still happening with the Carabao Cup. Press conferences can change things, but I'm fairly settled on this team. The only ones that I'm missing is I feel like I'm missing out on are Saka, the Almiron, maybe the Kepa. Otherwise, yeah,
Mm.
like I'm fairly settled with this team.
No, that sounds good. Hey, if you like it, that's okay. Cause remember, play your game. No copycats.
Yeah, that's how we do it.
Hmm.
All right, everybody. We hope you enjoyed us being back. If you did, don't forget to drop that subscribe. We haven't posted for a month and a half. We had our holiday, back to the grind. Joe is leaving the building with his Lev Yashin cap, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. Drop a thumbs up. Joe, would you like to say goodbye to our audience?
Yeah, yeah. Hope everybody enjoyed Tech Bro Joe. Yeah, he's going away. Ah, there we go. All right. Sorry, didn't want to make too much noise on the recording. Now you just have your boring old American Joe. Like, subscribe. Tell us what you think. Tell us whose draft you think's better. What you think you would change in them. Every little bit helps. And we're not doing it for the $0 paycheck, but we're doing it for just love of the game, right?
All right, everybody. We'll see you on the next episode.
All right. Peace, everyone.